It's happening. That is a solid mustache,
Well,
man. I
thank you.
had one going for a little bit. I couldn't find the right mustache wax to rock it, man. I couldn't do it.
Have I got one for you? I got
Te-
one, dude.
Tell me, because I want to
Yeah.
rock it. I don't have any hair
He's
on my
he's
head, so
using
I gotta have
snowboard
some kind
wax.
of yeah,
It's
right. Or
snowboard
is it
wax.
snowboard wax, or is it what? It's either that or I've heard like actual like glue stick, an actual
Yeah.
glue stick, which I
Oh
don't want that in my
no,
mouth,
no, you don't. And like the stuff I use is called Mustache. It's actually a small like
I'm
individual
writing
owned
it down.
company. I'll send you a picture of it too. Just
Yeah, I'm
in
writing
Austin,
it down right
Texas.
now.
Great dudes, Mustache. And dude, this stuff it's just enough to hold. If you get you go for a swim, it's gonna go away.
Right.
It's just enough. And like I don't have enough in right now. Mine's actually getting a little old, but I have that. And then I have this stuff called Death Grip, and you need an actual
That
guitar
sounds
pick to dig
serious.
it out. Oh yeah,
Man.
and I got to use the woman's hair dryer to like get it nice and liquefied, and you put it on, it ain't coming out.
Wow. I'm
And
going for the mustache.
Now I have a question about the actual time frame in which it takes to craft that thing on your face, because it sounds like quite the production after you explained it that way.
Oh,
hopefully we're recording all this. This is just such valuable content.
Oh, this is gold. This is what everyone
wants to know.
Shut it off
after this.
Well, yeah.
No, the trick is you got to get out of the shower, dry it off real quick, and hit it while it's still pliable.
Yeah, right where it hasn't done like the morning bed, like
exactly. I mean, it's facial pubes, so you got to like really work it.
Yep.
Just right.
Got to make it happen.
Just right. But aside from Mustache and Death Grip,
yeah.
So I got to dive into this. This is the first question we ask everyone, and I know that you were actually the first in that CrossFit world to actually have like confirmed case of COVID.
Yeah.
Can you go? I'm sure you've done it 1,000 times. Could you do it 1,001 times and humor us and tell us like how did it feel? Like you all of a sudden like this is not the normal cold, this is not a flu, and how did that escalate for you? And then what was it like? How long did it take you to come back?
Yeah, honestly, it just sucked.
Yeah.
I remember it was probably 2 days after we had to close the gym because of a shutdown. And I went for a run around my neighborhood, and it's really hilly, we're altitude. I remember thinking, this is not normal. I don't feel normal. I'm just breathing a little harder than I want to. Did another workout, had an assault bike in it, which no one ever likes that, right? But I just felt drained, and I thought this isn't normal. And I felt the need. It was weird. I felt the need to have to take a breath, and like I couldn't catch my breath, but I never had like a real bad cough. And this was at the start of this was almost 2 years ago now. So
yeah, no one really had it at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was so no one really knew what to tell you, and there was sort of this like weird thing. It was it was like you had an STD or something if you had COVID. Like you weren't allowed to tell anybody. It's this weird thing, so it just genuinely sucked because there was no rhyme or reason to it. I got it. My wife got it. She had like deep body aches and headache and a cough, but neither of us had a fever. And then my breathing thing just lingered. So it really lingered. And I would say, honestly, my wife, no kidding, like 7 days, like felt much better and was good to go, a little drained, right? But for me, that weird kind of breathing and the fatigue, it came and went, probably because I was pushing it too soon and just doing too much. But it took me a good, I would say, almost a solid 12 weeks to feel normal again, like really normal.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it was just breathing for you?
I had some weird nerve stuff. I felt like a little bit of nerve pain in my my hip, which was kind of weird. My knee, the dry cough, the runny nose, a little bit burning sinuses, and then honestly, it was just this feeling to need to catch my breath. Never was I labored breathing or anything like that, but I did go in to the urgent care a couple times because I was like, this is not normal.
Yeah,
and I don't feel normal. And when I would go in, they would check my oxygen and say, well, it's normal. Like, well, I don't feel normal, guys.
Yeah, so all right.
Yeah. So there was never a point of any kind of hospitalization or anything like that. But it was, especially that early on, no one really knew what to tell us.
True.
And because, so they would say, well, once your fever subsides, then you should be able to go out, go grocery shopping. I was like, well, I've never had a fever. And they're like, So obviously that was
Right.
2 years ago. So things have changed now. And, back then it was like, you couldn't get a test to find out if you were negative. It was just like, yeah,
Yeah,
it
the
was a
Wild West.
wild time. Still
Mhm.
is a wild time. My goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, it doesn't
now-
seem like we're through the woods yet.
I
It's
know.
still,
Oh.
yeah, it's like you don't exactly know what to expect. But you clearly had a lot of adaptability as far as running your business and kind of like making some things on the fly. Um, you've touched on that a little bit in some other interviews. What was your mindset as far as, how do we not just keep things going? Like, obviously you were transparent with your members saying like, we want to keep, like, this is a business, we want to keep it going. But as soon as you shifted gears from that to, well, how do I actually provide a service to, all my carry members that, I want to still provide something for? It seems like you got a little bit more creative than some other people, right out of the gate. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and what you actually did to keep people doing stuff.
I feel like it was pretty standard. Maybe what made us different is it didn't make sense for us to lease equipment. For me, I thought, okay, we're going to keep our membership running and we're going to provide the body weight version and do the Zoom class like everybody else. And so we did that. And we decided to just say, hey, we're going to give you guys our gear. Membership's going to keep going. We're going to have it be a donation basis, though, so that if you do need to stop, let us know and we can either pause it to where you won't be paying, but you'll still get access to the programming and Zoom classes. Or if you want to, need to cut that in half. And we're just really blessed. You have a really great community. And I think out of everyone, there was maybe 10 people that either had to, um, completely pause
Sure.
and not pay anything or have some kind of adjustment to it. And then obviously we had a handful of people leave, but I think the writing was on the wall. I think a lot of gyms that experienced that, maybe it was time for those people to move on anyway. And that was just a good excuse for them to say, hey, this is my exit strategy. I don't have to have that awkward conversation with coach on how it's not working for me anymore. So that was really kind of the standard side of things, honestly. But we also did really invest in our trainers. We really tried to create an environment where it gave them a chance to gain education on other ways to program, to help people get out of pain, ways to start to customize. And we tried to lean hard into that during that period to where that they could educate themselves on that and then even use that during that time. One of our trainers who has since moved to Montana, he would go over to people's houses and just train them out of the garage and, just hang out like a distance and whatever they were comfortable with and still do one-on-ones that way. So being adaptable and on the fly and supporting your coaches was huge for us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So after you got back from your breathing, slight nerve issues, how long it take you to get to neutral, and how long it take you from neutral to get to I'm back to normal? What like month? How many months are we talking here?
Yeah, probably 3 to get back to normal. And
Okay.
again, it's probably because I was pushing things too soon. I'm a bit of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
most people, I like to work out and I like to move.
Mhm.
And sometimes I did feel better when I worked out, but I really had to temper the intensity and keep the breathing to a minimum, stuck with some lifts and simple EMOMs to control the intensity. But it was a mindset shift for sure, to realize that I just couldn't do what I wanted to. But back to normal and feel like I could train the way I wanted to was probably a solid 3 months. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in this, for people who don't know, you've competed in the CrossFit Games as an open individual 6 times.
Uh,
Seven.
seven times as an
Okay.
individual and once as a master's. Yeah.
Okay. The math. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. And then how many times? So it would be 6 without being a master's.
So 7 without being a master's,
7 without
8
being a
with
master's.
8
Okay.
with being a master's.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were there from the inception.
Yeah.
Just
07. I
okay.
was there.
So the biggest thing I want to know from 07 to 2022, what's the biggest difference you see?
Weight. Loading on the barbell.
I love it.
Right. I mean, that's like
Heavyweight.
clearly.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Yes.
clearly the biggest gap, I think, of anything that they've done. And they've tried to create some endurance elements to it, but time and again, it's the weight on the barbell and the ability to not just one rep max, but cycle it as well.
Okay. And at your peak, you were what, like 155 pounds?
Oh, tops. I
Yeah,
mean,
like soaking
the
wet. Yeah.
most I ever weighed, gosh, the most I ever weighed was 160. And that was like way too far on the spectrum for me. But on the competition floor in 2012, I was probably about 151,
Mm-hmm.
152 maybe. And then in 2014, I was probably 142.
Okay. Which
Yeah.
to 152 to 142, which one do you prefer as a fighting weight?
It depends.
Mm-hmm.
So as you guys know, right, when you're a hard gainer
Mm-hmm.
like myself, you can do these training cycles and you can eat, right? You have to eat to support to gain the mass. But what I think a lot of people don't know is you can't just stop eating. You have to eat
Yeah.
that many calories to maintain that mass, right?
Um,
And there comes this kind of cost benefit of saying, okay, for me, I was eating 5,000 calories a day to be at 151, 152, which is like an absurd amount of food for people that don't have a frame of reference.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about 5,000 calories a day, not all of those are going to be quality. You're going
Yeah.
to have to tap into some higher fat content, some less favorable foods in order to accomplish that. And then how does that affect the rest of your training? So
Right.
in regards to being able to cycle barbells and lift and things like that, yeah, but I honestly, I think for me personally, I would say in that like 146, 147, I was probably a more well-rounded athlete than at that 155.
Okay. How would you, if you had an athlete you're working with, games level, regional level athlete, and they were like, okay, I don't know what body weight I should be at. I feel, I can carry 198 pounds,
Yeah.
but I mean, I can easily drop to 188 pounds. Like, at what point do you say, strength wise, okay, your deadlift's gone from 500 now to 420, and that's you might as well stay at 198.
Yeah, it's to take a look at the full picture, right? Because I was never an athlete that was going to win the deadlift ladder, the clean ladder. It's just on the cards, right? When
Yeah.
you weigh 145 pounds, you're not going to win the clean ladder. So what I think is happening to CrossFit is a sport is it's becoming so specific in nature that it's lending itself to a specific body type.
Mm-hmm.
There are fewer and fewer of these outliers like you used to see where shoot, I'm spacing on his name. Chad McKay, I think was his name. He was like 6'4", 220.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's me, it's just barely 5'5" and 145. Those are polar opposite ends of the spectrum, but we're
Yeah.
on the floor. I don't think you really see that anymore. I think you see more of this commonality of, at least in the men's, you're talking about 180 to 200, 5'6" to 5'10",
Mm-hmm.
and it's just narrowing that scope. So I think most of those people are probably within that window, and it's less about how much you weigh and more about performance. So, okay, how do I increase my strength and make sure that I haven't let go of the endurance, or does increasing my 1 rep max deadlift lend itself better to cycling the snatch, or do I need to let go of some of that weight on the deadlift so that I can increase the cycle on the snatch? It's just this balance game and not just about raw strength anymore.
Is that what you were kind of taking away every preceding year, leaving the games, and you're looking at, okay, how did, not just how did you fare, but what you were seeing as far as the competition? Did you find yourself thinking every year, like, I got to keep getting stronger when I come back the next year? Was that kind of the overwhelming thing that you were coming away with? Was
For
there
me
other things?
personally, yeah, 100%. Because it was kind of, I think it turned into two things, right? And just honestly, instead of me going from a mentality of I want to win the CrossFit Games, I knew for my body type that was kind of off the table, and maybe for my age too, because I was a little bit older than some of the other guys out there. I didn't have as much time to really see those gains, and I was actually seeing probably I had gone too far. My body was getting banged up, my knees, my back. They were taking a serious toll. I think because of the weight training that I had to do just to stay up to speed with guys that are able to do the stuff. And that was me just trying to get to the games, let alone trying to win the games. And I didn't worry about 1 rep max things because I knew I wasn't going to win the clean ladder, like we said, but it was more keep my head above water on that event. But if we saw a workout come up with 225-pound power cleans or, push jerks, front squats at 225, power snatches at 185, I had to be in the top 15. And then that also meant that if a workout with muscle ups and running comes in, I got to win it.
Yeah.
To be able to stay in the mix.
Sure.
So it's almost comes down to, for you, training for the games as opposed to doing really heavy, like top set singles. You're talking about training over 90% at those standard weights they're going to throw at you, and just like beating, rep maxes per se.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
I mean, my 1 rep max and my ability to cycle barbells was probably much closer than most athletes out there. That percentage was probably quite a bit narrower than you would see with a larger athlete.
Right on. When did you identify that? I mean, was it evident from the start, like in 07, 08? You're like, oh man, I can't play this 1 rep max strength game. I have to play this, this percentage type game we just discussed.
Yeah, I think so. It was funny in 07, we had the CrossFit Total with Mark Ripito, like old school.
Oh,
right?
yes.
And it was so funny because we went in and on, I think it was on Saturday, we had to go and weigh in. And then he treated it like a regular powerlifting meet. And I thought to myself, oh yeah.
Oh, that's epic.
And so I thought to myself, this is amazing. Like I get to weigh in, and how about this? Yeah, right.
Yes. Coefficients.
And I weighed 129 pounds.
Yes, you did.
It's crazy, right? On Saturday afternoon, I weighed 129, and I was like, I'm going to win the 2007 CrossFit Games. 1, because no one else is 129 pounds around me. That's a male. And 2, if they are, I'm going to smash them.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, we weighed in and then everybody just lifted together. And I was like, oh, well, there's clearly a disparity there.
So there wasn't a weight class thing?
No, but we had to weigh in.
They didn't coefficient it?
No. But we had to weigh in.
Just smoke and mirrors.
Oh.
So I think it was, I would just assume, I don't know, but I would just assume it was Ripito's need to have it be like a power. Because if you guys know Ripito, he's like, it's like, it's starting strength or it's nothing.
Yes.
Like there is
no hex bar deadlift. That's not an exercise.
No, trust me. Oh, I'm from Westside Barbell. I know.
So it's pretty funny to see like that bleed into it. And then sort of the next day just be like, well, reminder, it's still a CrossFit event. So we're going to do the total. And then, that's what ultimately took me out of the running for the win.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually brought this up. I've talked to Dan Bailey about this before. And I brought to a couple of people as well, but how would you feel if every CrossFit game started with a USAW sanctioned, you weigh in, coefficients matter, weight class matters, overalls matter, Olympic weightlifting competition? Like every time, that way you just see like what these guys and gals are doing. Like I don't know. It's not, obviously it's not constantly varied and it's not, a guess, it's going to happen, but the weights that they would put up, and for someone like you in that giant killer position, like coefficient wise, that would give you a huge, I'll say lead on the week.
Yeah. I mean, so it's twofold, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It sounds great.
Yeah, it does.
Because there's this piece of me that's like, hey, reality check, mass moves mass, right? Whether people want to admit it or not. And you can get really strong. But even look at the top lifters in the world. I mean, there's a reason there's weight classes, right? Because when you're a 136-pound guy, I mean, even the best in the world, what are those guys front squatting? Like 400 pounds, 420? Like if you're talking like the best Olympic lifter in the world. Yeah. But compared to a heavyweight, I mean, you're talking about 650, 700 pounds. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, at some point, it's just not the reality of the situation. Is you can't compare yourself to that. Now, on the flip side of that coin, right? So I would like that to be able to say, hey, yeah, like check it out. A 2-time body weight clean and jerk for me is like in the cards, where no one else can do that on the floor. Like no one else is doing 415, but they're close. So that for me, it would be like, that's cool. But there's this other piece of me that, man, I love the underdog role, and I absolutely loved beating guys when I shouldn't have. I
That is fun.
loved,
That is
yeah,
fun.
I
It is
loved
fun.
like
It's
beating
cool.
the odds,
Yeah.
and over the course of the weekend, let the chips fall where they may, and being able to be maybe a little bit of that athlete that bridged the gap between everybody, that was training kind of recreationally to looking at the games and saying, well, man, if he can do that, maybe I can do that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a role that I think would have been maybe missed if everything was just based by weight.
Okay.
But I always
Yeah.
did think it'd be cool for them to do some kind of event that was based off of a body weight percentage, whether it was like Linda, a really classic CrossFit workout, or I mean, what the heck, maybe even slant it the other way. And where you have one workout like that, where it's a barbell type workout and it's based off percentage, and then a body weight workout where smaller guys like myself have to do more reps and bigger guys have to do less. Like, what if we did something like that, like
Right.
true variance, and try to play favorite?
Kind of
I
level
just
the
think it'd
floor
be,
a little bit.
yeah, just be kind of fun to change it up like that. But
Right.
I think all in all, I really enjoyed the side of like, hey, no weight class. I'm just going to beat you even when I shouldn't.
Right. Right. So like with that underdog role and like that in mind, and just being, I mean, ever since I knew who you were back in, I think it was 09, I always called you the giant killer because you just were.
Yeah.
It's you're small and you're slaying them, and it feeds into what you like, which is like beating guys that you're really not supposed to beat habitually, a habitual line stepper, if you will. And at what, like when you got to like 08, 09, the weights, you see the weights going up. If you imagine your research as in a shovel digging a hole, how many shovels did you go down deep, down to a rabbit hole till you got to a point like, okay, I can't go any deeper in this hole? Because if I get all the way down to that pure, Westside Conjugate classic template, like 1 rep maxes, it's not going to benefit me. Like, you remember what the steps were approximately? How far you went down? Like, this was cool, this worked better, I adjusted this for me. You went down, like, oh, that's too far, and you came back and you found your happy medium. Could you lay into that?
Yeah, honestly, like, so Chris Mason, another Westside Barbell guy, right?
Yeah.
So Chris actually reached out to me in 2010.
Okay.
And he said, hey, I got third that year, and he reached out and he's like, hey, I really think I can help you. If we can get you stronger, I think you could win. And I was like, I'm in. So Chris kind of took me under his wing. And if you go old school, and I'm telling you, this program, it works. Go back to the CrossFit Journal. This is like really 2010. He took the program that he wrote for me and he put it in the CrossFit Journal, and it's called CrossFit Conjugate. And it has a max effort lift. It's a 3-week progressive overload, has a max effort lift followed by accessory works that couple it, 1 lower body day a week, 1 upper body day a week. And then I did that. And then on the posing, essentially 3 days per week, I did CrossFit workouts. So I did that for a 9 to 10 week cycle. And then I tried to recycle that. And I definitely ate a bunch of food. He was like, hey, you got to do this. You got to do this. Start off with adding 300 or 3,000 calories. We're going to try to add weight. Once you stall out for your body weight at a pound for more than a week, we're going to add another 500 calories. So I did that over the course of the fall in 2010. So after the games, saw some great strength gains, which for me was huge. Didn't worry as much about body weight, but definitely put on some mass. And then after about, I would say 2 cycles of that, I went back to just straight up, typical CrossFit stuff. Next year, I did the same thing, worked with him again, and really tried to put on quite a bit of size. That's when I got up to 160, tested a workout that I was normally good at. It was like 95-pound squat cleans, pull-ups, and 800-meter runs. And I was suffering, and I thought I've gone way too far.
Yeah.
So I stopped eating I thought I'll train the same way, but I'm gonna stop eating 5,000 calories a day. I lost 10 pounds in 5 days, just gone. So that kind of put me in that frame of reference of, okay, I've gone too far down that hole. I'm too far on the strength side. I clearly can't eat this much food as a sustainable way to even perform. And then, so I worked with Chris that year, and then started having shortly after that, Ben Bergeron coach. And that's where a lot of the barbell cycling came into play. And he would even admit this. I think I was maybe his first athlete that I worked with.
Okay.
And I think I was a bit of a guinea pig for him, to be honest,
Oh,
I really do.
I really do.
And we worked well together in the sense that I would tell him like, hey, I'd like to do this. And maybe we'd start something and I'd say, this is not working. I need to do more of this. And he would say, cool, give me a couple days. And gosh, this is almost 8 years ago now. So a lot of things have changed. So it was a lot of conversation back and forth. And then during that time, I would kind of take on that role of saying, hey, I need to do this specific strength work during this block of training. Then we're going to phase out of that. And we're going to spend some time on cycling barbells. Then we're going to get into more conditioning stuff as we get into closer to like regionals and the games. But it was a process for sure. And I think it could have been done better, 100%. But I think with what we knew and what I knew, it was probably the best approach at the time.
Okay. That CrossFit Conjugate workout you're talking about with Chris Mason.
Yeah.
It's a 3-week progressive overload. Now, when you say progressive overload, are we talking about the dynamic day where we're going up percentages, or we're talking about like the actual max effort day where you're sticking with the same lift and maybe you're adding reps or pounds?
Yeah, it was actually interesting. And I'm kind of with Chris on this thought process. So true Westside, this, but for those of you guys that don't, there's a max effort day and there's a dynamic day, right? The max effort day is where we get the most amount of weight on the back, accessory load, and then dynamic day is all about bar speed. Chris thought, and maybe, gosh, this was, again, almost 10 years ago now, but in conversations with Chris really thought the dynamic effort day was recovery. He didn't think that bar speed was the key to you getting stronger. He thought the max effort day with accessory work was the real crux to getting stronger. And a dynamic effort day allowed you to recover to hit that max effort day hard again. And so he took that approach of saying, hey, we are going to do a lift for your one to tap into the CNS and make sure that we're able to fire everything at once to get the absolute most out of our contractile potential. But I'm telling you, the accessory stuff was no joke. It was not like, it was not your typical 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps. I mean, we were doing these things. He would call them giant sets, and it was vicious, man. It was, we would go, I would have to do basically two failure back to back. I did 20 stiff leg deadlifts, immediately followed by max rep leg extension, which he wanted me to cap out about 20 or 30 reps. Immediately
extension.
Followed, yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
okay.
with a band, because I didn't have a machine, so I'd use a band.
Yeah.
And then immediately into a set of 10 front squats. And so I was like, for me, I was 275 for the set of 20 on the stiff leg deadlift, green band at 30 reps, and 225 for a set of 10 unbroken. And I mean, like head popping off stuff. And it's as hard as you make it, right?
Right.
But this was not, this is not your casual accessory work. This was like, I would argue, like West Side guys, I never saw West Side guys do stuff like that. I saw them do individual pieces.
Yeah.
But I mean, Chris put them back to back to have it be something where it was all about time under tension and cycling weight. Like heinous. It was really hard. Yeah. And if you got after it, I was exhausted, wiped.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and that was his approach, was we still did the max effort day followed by accessory work. And then my dynamic effort days are basically CrossFit.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were in that setup, you're doing 275 stiff leg for 20.
Yeah.
That's pretty rough. How many sets are you doing of that? How many giant sets are you going through? 4? 2.
You do 2 with a 5-minute rest. So you do you do the 20 leg extension, 10 rest 5 minutes, do the same thing again. Yeah. And I mean, other stuff, like a set of 20 alternating front rack lunge and then front squat. So a lunge squat for 20, like what, who does that? Yeah. Like that right into. So there's quite a bit of a conditioning element to that as well.
Yeah. I think, I'm glad you said that, because that's the real thing going on there. I think is the amount of work capacity from the outside looking in. Cause I've utilized a lot of that stuff in my own training. It's amazing if you took someone that was training like that remove all the CrossFit element from it and just said, okay, we're going to do CrossFit now, I think people would be blown away at the kind of shape they're in if they were doing something like that for a substantial period of time. Because like you said, there's so much work capacity transpiring in a giant set like that. It transfers over so well because you're just such a robust human to be able to recover from that and push weight through a tremendous amount of fatigue too. There's a lot of bang for your buck there.
Yeah. And I think for those that are really aerobic, it starts to turn you into an anaerobic athlete. So pros and cons, right? If you need that, that's the recipe, but be careful because if you do that too much, when you start to go for the 5-mile run, you start to lose that translation. So again, you got to find that balance. But I'm telling you, I honestly think this is going to sound maybe like biased, but I think it's absolutely too much for your average Joe. And I think too many people can't wrap their head around like the pain cave that you have to go in to get the benefit out of it. I mean, it is exhausting if you really put the screws to. If you do it right, the way that it's written, you could easily make that 20 leg extension, 10 really reasonable, rack your 10 front squats, walk over, grab your coffee and be breathing a little bit. Or you could really challenge yourself and be on the floor afterwards.
Well, and if you do that too, the mentality that goes with that, you're not just doing that for a single workout and it's not random. So, you're coming back the next week to do that again.
Yeah.
That right there is crippling to an overwhelming amount of people. I think that's why people that, train with someone, like if you're someone to jump in and follow along with you and do that, you could take 10 people and there might be one person, like not just 10 average people, like 10, you could take 10 CrossFit members. There might be one at the end of it that's like still like mentally excited about doing that.
Totally. Because in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, maybe I can do, the stiff leg at 280 next week. And maybe I can do the front squat at 230 next week. And it just completely changes because you know what you're in for.
Right.
Yeah. Oh man. So, I mean, it was stuff like that. Yeah. It works. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I was around Chris Mason for like 2 years, my first 2 years at Westside. So like 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
I never openly talked to him about like training like CrossFitters, but he was very, very clever in that, well, this is what they have to do. So I'm going to put them in such a suck, and like perfectly executed suck. Like you have technique beyond technique. So he knows he can throw this on you and you're going to execute it at a high level. But you're right. For normal people, they can't do that. And if they do it, they won't really get much out of it. And whenever I work with CrossFitters for, with regional or games level, like they usually start with minimum supersets because that's what their game is. Like a Westside lifter, that's not their game.
Right.
The game's pieces by pieces, but for you guys, it's just how much time or attention can you go through and recover from it and come back better, because that's going to make you much better on the floor.
Yep, totally. And I think that's the crux of it. But I do think, and here's maybe this is getting us off topic, but I think the trap that sometimes people fall into when they start thinking about programming for CrossFit, and this is why I really have embraced the Westside kind of mentality with Conjugate stuff, is I really think following a percentage-based lifting program is extremely difficult when it comes to a CrossFit training program. Because if you start talking about a percentage-based back squat, Olympic lift, I don't care what it is, and you start stacking on, even if we're just talking about your average member that comes to the gym 5 or 6 days a week, if you take that regular programming and then you try to layer on top of it a lifting program that's percentage based, that most of these people are pulling from other places, and they're meant to be a standalone lifting program. They're meant to be a training program that is done as just a lifting program and nothing else goes with it. So you hear these people say, and this is no knock to the programs. The programs themselves can be excellent, right? But gosh, how many times have you heard people say, I'm going to do CrossFit and the hatch squat program.
Yes.
I'm going to do
CrossFit
CrossFit
all the time.
And the 20 rep back squat.
Nope.
I'm going to do this and the Bulgarian method. I'm like, you are in, right? I'm like, these guys are like, their job is to eat, sleep, and lift.
Yeah.
It's not to do CrossFit. And what happens is people get absolutely buried.
Mhm.
And then they're like, why am I not seeing results? I'm lifting, I'm doing all this. And I'm like, hey, get rid of some of the most successful things I've seen with the athletes that I've worked with Speal programming. We're talking about just a large group of people and individuals. I've even had individuals reach out to me. I had a high-level games athlete reach out to me one time, and they wanted to have me try helping them coach, and their volume dropped way down. Honest to goodness, we did a really similar thing that Chris was having him do, had me do, tweaked it to what they needed. And this was in the off season, and they were like, they literally said, I don't understand. They're like, my lifts are going up, but I'm training less.
Yeah.
Like that's
'Cause they're a
exactly
normal
right.
human.
Science.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's it. But they
That's it.
couldn't handle it. They were like,
Oh.
it's not enough. And I'm like, just trust the
Yes.
process. We're just talking about a three-month block. And they left me because they couldn't wrap their head around it. And I was like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But some of the most successful things I've seen is approaching lifting with purpose, but a conjugate method. And even with Olympic lifting, I've written up a program that I've run through, and I've tried it twice. I tried a percentage-based Olympic lifting program with our online platform. And no lie, I don't think anyone PR'd their lifts off the percentage-based program in along with CrossFit, right? So we were doing CrossFit and the percentage base. And then I wrote up one that is based off, it's called the build up or the workup method. And basically it's to give you, essentially you have to accumulate 5 sets of the exercise. And it was a Olympic lifting variation. And we would say you have to accumulate 5 sets within 20% of one another, and you find a 1 rep max for the day. So let's just say it was a clean and jerk.
Sure.
You build up and you find your perfect. Now that's the question, is someone really making it perfect?
Sure.
Right. Perfect 1 rep max for the day. And let's just, for number's sake, say it's 100 pounds. You have to make sure that you accumulate 5 total work sets within 20% of that. So as long as you have 5 work sets that are 80 pounds or higher, you're done for the day. And you may have hit that on the way up. You may have to do some deload sets, but that with accessory work, no percentages. Numerous people PR'd on their Olympic lifts, because you cannot tell me that 90% feels like 90% after you did the filthy 50 and Fran and 400 meter runs. It's just not,
Right.
It's not accurate.
No.
Yep.
Sorry, rant.
No, that was
I
a
love
beautiful
that
rant.
Oh, that was like right up strength and conditioning, like alley.
Yeah.
Dustin, you want to spearhead this, and I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah, you can just
yeah.
knock me off the horse, because there's a few things that I want that he brought up.
You go ahead.
One, well, early CrossFit too, and I'm guilty of this measuring stick too. When guys like Rich or Dan Bailey or whatever posted workouts early on, and I'm following them, RX. I'm doing exactly what those guys are doing because I know I can stick with them, and I'm thinking I'm going to the hospital the next day, and I'm like, what is going on here? And it's the same thing. It says, why you don't go to the guy in the gym that has 21-inch arms and ask him what he did for his arms.
Yeah.
There are superhumans out there, and CrossFit is exposed, brought quite a few of them to the forefront. And when people are kind of looking from the outside in, to look at their stature and their weight and what kind of weights they're moving, I'm looking at that like I can do that comparable thing, so I must be able to do it too. Obviously, there's a variety of things going on that are crossing over different energy systems, but there are superhumans that exist too, and those are not the people you should be getting advice from. Maybe even if you're questioning one of the superhumans, I've trained with some of those people, and they do have some things going on that allow them to recover a little bit better than the average person. So, I mean, that would lend itself to that methodology of not just the individual person, but then on any given day where you're at with your biorhythms and things like that, are you suited to do a little bit better on that day or not? I mean, it's just another version of like a self auto-regulated type of programming, and that's what we're talking about here. And there's a variety of ways to do it. and then what's going to be the most effective to communicate that as a coach in your setting in a CrossFit gym too, that's going to make sense across the board. Because I think that's another conversation that um, people like to have a lot of conjecture about optimal things, but when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of doing it on the daily in a training setting with a bunch of people, we're not talking about like training one off person.
Right.
It looks a lot different to have an effective methodology of what's going to really work well that and transcends everyone in the room from the weakest linked to the best athlete. And that's one of those things that I truly believe that it's going to work really well, because that's what the environment actually elicits as far as what's going to be usable there. But if I had a thought after that, I forgot it. So go ahead, Joe. And
No, I like Chris, you brought up like several programs, like you brought up Small Nog, you brought up Hatch.
Yep.
And then the 20 rep program.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Squat Every Day program?
Yep. I mean, I remember Dave Lipson trying to back squat 500 pounds every day. Crazy, right? Kudos.
I can't
Dave.
do that.
Oh my gosh, I'd be dead. I mean, Dave's a freak. He's a superhuman, right?
Yeah.
But like, yeah. And two, I think one of the things, and this is just like, I think my passion and like my pet peeve, and like, I hope it comes off right, is I get so frustrated sometimes by the allure that people have to want to follow the program of the elite when they forget that there's a building system to get there, and that just even might not be appropriate for your best performance. Like you might not do the best off of volume, and you could still be incredibly fit. And also just like, what the heck are we doing if you're not trying to legitimately go to the CrossFit Games or regionals, so sanctionals, right? What are you doing? Like, why? You can do CrossFit as your sport and do it so much smarter, and do it where you're walking around feeling healthy, feeling strong, feeling hardy, feeling fit, feeling conditioned, and not just completely run down. And there's a way to do that effectively. And it's not always the allure of the, train like the guy on the podium, right? Like there's a time and a place for that, but gosh, it's just, I wish I could just get in people's heads and be like, hey, like, what problem are you trying to solve? And what is it? If you want to get stronger and you want to get more fit, there might be a better way to do this. Or maybe what you're doing is great, but volume's not always the answer.
Yeah, that's the most frequent conversation I think I've had as a coach that transcends every environment that I've been in. Is that right there? Is people getting these notions? And just like anything, I think there's a double-edged sword on both ends of this. But because social media has made things so accessible, people so accessible, what they're doing so accessible, and then people trying to make a living off their name and themselves too, which is nothing wrong with that. I totally get that. But that can lead, I don't know how many people it is, but that can get a lot of people derailed and chasing something they shouldn't be chasing. Because I think, if I was to finish your thought there, it'd be, you really should be in the mindset of chasing your best self every day and really just competing and getting better at that, because that's going to make you satisfied in the long run and happy and fulfilled. And if something greater builds off of that and you have other opportunities, whatever those might be, that's amazing. That's fantastic. But I think people are so accessible and in all these realms of strength that it can get people starting to idolize on an unhealthy level with a lot of things like that, and get them really derailed and get their mind into a place that's maybe motivating, but definitely not optimally productive.
Yeah. And hear me out. Like, this is not a knock on competitive programming, because guess what? I mean, I did it for a decade, right? So I get it. But I think part of the reason why I'm so passionate about it is I know what it takes and I know what it costs. I think a lot of people don't know what it costs, right? And if you're in the game to really put the screws to it and try to win the CrossFit Games, by all means, like, if that's your passion, freaking go for it, right? And have an understanding of the sacrifice that it's going to take. Be ready for that and do it. But if you are not in that position, if that is not really what's solving your problem, just have that conversation. Say, hey, what do I want out of this? What do I really want out of this? And is what I'm doing giving me what I want? Or is it too much time in the gym, too much volume? And am I missing something? And that's the last thing that I want to have anybody that walks in my gym or follows my online program to say is this, because I mean, I've evolved over time, right? As I used to program, gosh, way back, because I'm one of them with an online program. Is way back, I mean, it was like there were three of us, and there was no competitive programming, so we just programmed competitive programming. And now we've completely evolved because of what I'm compassionate about. If you want to go to the CrossFit Games, following my programming is a great foundation. But after you get so far, it's not going to get you there. I'll tell you what it's really good for is being strong and well-rounded and getting outside and playing and learning new sports. That's what it's good at. And like, that's what I'm passionate about. So that's what I want to help people with is like, how do we apply this stuff outside the gym? And if you are so banged up that you can't go ride your bike, ski, learn how to skateboard with your kid, like what are we doing? So I just think
Yeah.
it's worth people asking that. What am I doing? What am I trying to get out of it? And it's okay to change that, right? It's okay to have that change over time and say, hey, there's a season of my life where I was really competitive and I wanted to do that. And maybe that's changed. Maybe I've had kids or I started this business over here and now I need to be more efficient with my training. And gosh, I mean, when we start talking about Westside, Conjugate, and those kind of strength programs, I don't know that there's a better, more efficient way for just a strength program to play a role like that.
Yeah, I mean, like Justin's asked me that before. Like when I look at a template, like what's the best template for all around strength development? And like, dude, it's really hard to beat a Conjugate template. And going back to what you were mentioning, where percentages when you're doing CrossFit strength stuff, maybe not so much. I am on board with what you're saying, where I'm really big into the whole Mel-Sif auto regulation. Just the way you do it, especially what you do at the CrossFit, where you can like take like 5 sets and average it out and find that top set for the day. I think that's a great scenario because, like you said, like if you're doing Fran or you're doing Diana something before it because you can't get the strength first, like it ain't gonna go well, or the previous day was rough. And I've seen people do the squat every day, and their knees go to shit because you're running and you're doing wall balls and all kinds of stuff. I've seen people do the hatch. The first time they do it, it goes great. Second time, it goes to the shitter. I've seen people do the Smolnov. I don't understand why they do that because that was designed for Russians who take extracurricular supplementation. They're on anabolics because they play the game to win, and that's all they do. And then when one craps out, they go. I've never seen anyone do the Bulgarian method. That would be and CrossFit. That'd be terrifying.
10 by 10, it's like crazy. And so I think all those things to be said, gosh, there's so much room to be creative. And I think the self-regulating is really important. I've been working with a buddy of mine, Spencer Nix, on it. We're trying to find ways to help people understand, like, how do you assess yourself on a day-to-day basis? For us at Park City Fit and what we do with Spealler programming, I still program 1 day a week where it's just heavy lifting. That's it. Like, I don't program anything else on that day. And currently, so here's what else is interesting, right? Is I've gone through seasons where I've stuck with just really varied lifts throughout the weeks and changed it from powerlifting to Olympic lifting and filling in the blanks. And I also think there's great value to consistency, so like right now, because I think there's value to it, we are following 5-3-1, but I let our athletes choose. I said, hey, you choose back squat or front squat. And I had a couple people say, well, can I do deadlift? I'm like, you can, but here's what I'd be cautious of, and then we do some accessory work after that, but that's all we do on our lifting day. And we don't do a Metcon after that. Like, that's it. And then somewhere else throughout the week, I will program in some kind of heavy Olympic lift, but it's typically as a primer for another workout.
Yeah.
So build to find a heavy. So we maintain that technique and maintain that heavier loading, but whatever that is for the day. And then we apply that as almost an overload before the workout that we're going to see the same movement pattern in.
So you get that contrast method.
Yes, there's lots of ways to be creative, but I think it's really important to have the ability to self-assess. And most people, I think don't want to give themselves the opportunity to do that because they feel like they are obligated to follow the workout on the whiteboard as it's written. And that's just not an accurate representation of the way that the program's going to work for longevity. It just can't. And we're in this season. Sorry if I'm talking a lot.
No, go for it. No, this is great.
You're hitting the nail on the head, I think,
Yeah.
with some things right now.
We're in this season, right, where I think early on that was this, we were in this experiment. And I remember talking to people and saying, like, what's this going to look like in 15 years? Like, what can people do this for 20 years? Nobody knew because no one had, right? They had been doing it for 5 or 6 years. And this is like early, right?
Yeah.
Even 2001, the most people have been doing this for was 4 years, right? And if you look at the programming in 2001 compared to now, even on CrossFit.com, it's, vastly different.
Vastly different.
Completely different program, right?
Black, white.
A really cool experiment to look at. But if you think about now, we're in that phase. We are with athletes. My gym, we have people. I have a member that has been with us from day one, and we have been open for 15 years in April or May. So you're telling me, Steve is his name. If he started with us when he was 45, he's 60 now. That is a different approach.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to self-assess and say, hey, I'm going to take these movements off the table. They don't have value to me anymore, but I can still get the benefit of that stimulus by doing this hinge pattern and this overhead movement. Hey, I need to have varied intensity throughout the week. I can only hit it hard 2 times a week. So the other 2 days a week, I'm not going to put a clock on, or I'm going to control the intensity. I mean, fill in the blank. I need to be able to self-assess and find out, what movements are appropriate, what are not. How can I fill in the blanks and work those like strength balance areas? Gosh, I mean, and I think that's where, Spencer and I have been trying to work on some things to help educate people with that. It's what I try to communicate to my clients in the brick and mortar at Park City Fit. It's something I try to communicate to the online programming and Spealler programming. That's really hard because we're not in person. But I think we're at a turning point where if people aren't mindful of how to self-assess, they're going to get chewed up and spit out. Or you can self-assess and do this for a lifetime.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, going back to your, it was one of your top 10 guy or gal who reached out to you, and they couldn't handle it because it was too low a volume. Now, is that because they didn't feel like afterward the session it was taxing enough, or they looked at like, I need to be practicing much more? Well, do you remember exactly what it was by chance?
I think it was maybe the shift of volume. You know what I mean? Just the overall volume and that time of year. And they had just come off of coming out of the games. So they were used to being in a really high volume cycle and then saying, okay, now you're telling me that I'm only lifting 2 days a week. That's all I'm allowed to do is lift. And the other 4 days a week I CrossFit. Like we're talking about, I used to do this much in a day or two, and now I'm doing it in a week. And that's hard. I understand it's a different mentality, but it's also a different season of training, right? And for those athletes, I do think there is a periodization phase where for the general population, I don't think it's necessary, but I do think it's really fun. The way that we like to do it is I still utilize templates and do some kind of periodization over like a 9 or 12 week block where I really focus on just different ways of training. So it might be that we're going to have a dumbbell day for our CrossFit workout once a week. And we're maybe going to have what I would call like a build the base workout once a week, where it's just a lot of conditioning and not much of a barbell. And instead of the 5-3-1 method, maybe we're going to go back to a conjugate method or do the build up method. So I use that throughout the year to create those templates, but it's not near as specific as you would see as, some high level games athlete.
Okay. Yeah. So did you come to the conclusion of self-regulation on your own after several years of trying a multitude of training programs? Or is it something you saw going on? You're like, oh, we've got to adjust this before it completely derails.
Yeah, I think I had a hard road. So I obviously, you know, Ben and I worked together to program for me when I was competing, and then I stopped competing, and then I stumbled into the games in 2017 as a masters. But just frankly, when I finished competing, I was broken. My knees were messed up, and so much that um, I had to really hit the reset button, and I couldn't squat. I couldn't do a push press, a power clean, any kind of knee flexion. Like I couldn't do it for 3 months. So I had to completely stop and let things kind of recover. I couldn't run. I had a hard time walking up and down stairs. So once I reset that, it was really hard to find um, purpose in my training, right? And realize that I don't have to train like a games athlete to have what I want. So for me, the outlet was activities outside. It was the sport side of things. It was finding passion in downhill mountain biking, going dirt biking with my buddies, getting back into skiing again, which I absolutely love, being more present with my family and able to go out and do those things. And as I started to realize this is what I want out of my training, that starts to skew the type of training that you do. And then Spencer says it really well. And this is something that, you know, just recently has resonated with me. He'll say, don't do anything today that will keep you from coming in tomorrow. And I think that makes a lot of sense when you're talking about the general population and longevity in our training. And so that evolution has taken 5 years for me to say, okay, screw the RX. Like I can do this right for me. And it could look vastly different than what you're doing. It could look that way. It could have the perception of looking very different, but that well-rounded fitness and the stimulus is still maintained. I mean, I can't snatch anymore. My shoulder, I've never gotten looked at, but I think I have a torn labrum. I don't snatch anything more than 75, maybe 95 pounds. Like that's it. So what am I doing instead? On a snatch day, I'm doing jumping trap bar deadlifts. I might do some overhead carries, maybe some banded kettlebell swings. And people are looking at me and they're like, that's not what we're doing. Like, well, hey, I'm still getting a similar movement pattern. And guess what I can do? Go ski powder tomorrow. Go shred on my mountain bike tomorrow. And so that requires education, requires knowledge. It requires a level of maturity to say, hey, it doesn't matter that I'm not doing it the way that it looks. I'm doing it right for me, and it's still accomplishing the same goal as the class.
Yeah.
I mean, today, perfect example. We had a workout written up, great workout. It's for the class, 3 rounds, run 400 meters, 7 back squats at 245 and 21 chest to bar pull-ups. And I was like, well, I chose to do back squat on my 5-3-1 day. So I know that's coming up. I'm going to switch out and do a front squat instead. And I'm going to try 225 because I think I could do sets of 7, but it'll be a grind. Knees feel good today. I'm going to push. I'm in a big group class environment. I've got a power rack and I'm like, cool, I can do the pull up on the power rack. I'll see how I feel today. Maybe I'll do strict if my shoulder's bothering me. If not, I'll do chest to bar. And class is packed. It's snowing outside. I'm not going to run. And literally I just kind of looked around the gym and I was like, okay, I see like a rower. I see some ski ergs. 3, 2, 1, go. Clock starts. I start in a different order because everybody else is on the cardio stuff. I do my front squats. I do my pull-ups. I turn around and I was like, oh, that ski erg's open. Ran over to the ski erg, knocked out 500 meters. I mean, I got an awesome workout.
Yeah.
And it was not exactly the way it was written on the whiteboard. But that takes practice. It takes experience and maturity. So I think that's a process everyone has to go through. And if they don't, I think there's that risk of burnout.
Yeah. Definitely.
Have you seen really bad cases of burnout in like the upper tier competitive CrossFit world? Like top 20, top 40 male, female. Have you ever seen that before? Or is that usually something you see that lower tier constantly overreaching?
I think it's more the lower tier that want to get there.
Okay.
I think it's almost opposite. What I saw at the high elite level, and maybe it's changing because it was, you know, maybe easier to get to the games in the past. I'm not sure. It's still really hard. But I would see people that were at the top hanging on to stay at the top. Right. And like, I gotta make it back one more year, like myself included. Right. Or people I see them like clinging, like, I'm just going to keep training, like bashing my head into the ground and hopefully I'll just make it back. And then, so then we have to ask ourselves, like, why? You know, is it because that's really fulfilling you, or you feel obligated? Where the athletes that really wanted to be there, those are the ones that, and like we talked about just a little bit earlier, is like that maybe you want to emulate that, right? Or maybe you feel motivated or inspired by that athlete at the top, and you're trying to get there, but maybe you don't have all the tools, or you don't have the foundation built up. Those are the ones that I think have experienced more burnout than the top tier. And let's be honest too, it's like, I was telling my buddy, again, Spencer, this, I had this sort of epiphany in the past few weeks. I was doing a workout for a great cause. It was awesome. It was at a fundraiser. And I was down there, and I'd done the workout a bunch of times, and I was doing it. It was on the weekend, and I was working hard, and I was like in the group and doing the thing. And in the middle of the workout, I was like, man, what am I doing? Like, I'm doing this workout again. I've done it. It's cool. Like, I'm happy to support the cause, but like, what am I doing? And I thought to myself, I got to experience CrossFit in a way that 0.5% of the population did.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I got to stand on the floor at the games. I mean, I'm so fortunate. I'm so blessed to have the experience that I do. And I still say to myself, what am I doing? I'm like, if I say that, what's the average Joe that's been doing it for a decade saying? And I think that's where we need to really say, how can I self-assess? And like, what am I doing it for? Because guess what, bro? Your performance clock is ticking. And someday you're not going to put 20 pounds in your back squat. And you're not going to give a crap if your thruster is 225. You're going to be like, what have I done with this? And how am I using it? And maybe it's to inspire other people and coach and train. Maybe it's to go have adventure outside the gym and experience that with your kids. But you got to have a reason why you're doing it, so that you know how to self-assess and you can do it for the long run.
So you're saying everyone needs to have some sort of internal motivation
100%
to drive them. Yeah.
Eventually, right? Because we all go through that CrossFit phase, right? Where it's like, this is amazing.
Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like, I found the thing that
the community.
Sick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like the community and the clock and the PRs. But guess what?
Yeah.
That has a lifespan. Not the community. If you're in a good gym, that will always be there. But if that's the only thing that's keeping you there, maybe you need to say, hey, like, what is that motivation? Is it that I know it's giving me a better quality of life outside of the gym? Is it that when I go dirt bike, I don't have to worry about picking up my dirt bike? I that doesn't even enter my mind.
Yeah.
Where other people, when you ask them, hey, do you want to go for a hike today? They're like, where are you going? And it's like, well, I'm going to go hike Mount Timpanogos. They're like, how much elevation is that? You're like, well, it's like, 2,000, 2,500 vertical feet. And they're like, I don't know if I can do that. Like, I don't want that. I want my buddy to say like, hey, do you want to go for a hike? And I'm like, yeah, where are we going? Let's like, what time should I meet you? I don't know how far that hike is. I don't give a crap. I'm just going to go. That's what I want. And I think that that's what people miss if they get so specific, or they don't have the motivation to train.
I mean, did that mentality start when you came out of the games last time and your knees and your back were just like shot and you're like, oh man, the reality is like, oh, I'm not going to be able to pick up. I don't know, I'm throwing this out there. I'm not going to be able to pick up my child. Like, was that when it's like, oh no.
It's funny because it didn't happen yet. I just thought at the time, I've messed myself up so much that I won't be able to do these things.
Oh, so you just completely wrote it off like, oh, it's just not going to happen anymore.
I didn't know that I could get it back.
Okay.
I thought, well, like I'm messed up, And then once I got it back, I went through this season of, I need to keep it. I need to keep everything I worked for. I still I always want to be able to snatch 225, and I always want to be able to clean and jerk 275. And then that changed to, well, that takes a lot of work. Well, I'm 42. Like, guess what? Your performance clock is ticking. And we all hit the peak. All of us. I don't care who you are. I don't care how long you've been around. I don't care what training method you're doing. Doesn't matter. You're all going to hit the peak.
Yeah.
And when you're on the backside of the peak, what the heck are you doing? And now for me, it is to maintain as much as I can, but that looks really different. So maintenance for me is I want to feel strong.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what does that mean for me? That's not a number on a barbell anymore. That's not me deadlifting 450. It's not me back squatting 400 or clean and jerk 275. That's me feeling extremely capable every day in the class, outside of the gym. When my daughter asked me to pick her up and carry her to a bedroom, I want her to feel like nothing. You know what it like?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't want to be so broken that I can't do that. And there's a way to do that. There's a way to do it really effectively. And I think everybody has to look at that. Okay, performance clock's ticking. When it hits the peak, why do I still do it? Because, hey, if we all love this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's you love strength training and you just want to be as strong as you can be, or you love CrossFit and you want to be as most well-rounded as you can be, or you love endurance sports and you want to go run marathons. If you love it and you want to keep doing it for a lifetime, you got to have an approach that's going to support that. And eventually, the approach to win it at the highest level is not the approach to do it forever.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Was this, and when did you start using things that aren't common in CrossFit? So I'm talking like things I texted you earlier with, like the safety squat bar, box squatting. Yeah. I mean, was this all from that multiple month experiment with Chris Mason, and you just kind of carried it on, and you're like, this is great, I'm gonna keep this piece?
Yeah, Chris really influenced that for me.
Okay.
And I think it's a little bit of a catch too, because my flexibility and mobility is generally like really good, so I don't have to worry about improving that for Olympic lifts. My technique, it came kind of naturally once I practiced it a lot. And could it be better? For sure, but the technical side of those movements was not the issue. It was generally the raw strength, right?
Yeah.
Now, other athletes might need to really spend time working on the technical aspect and actually like not worry about raw strength as much. But that was a big influence for me. And truthfully, as I've gotten into, my late 30s and early 40s, I find that a powerlifting approach and more of a strongman approach is much more sustainable than a more like ballistic approach. Lots of Olympic lifting, decelerating movements. It's just harder on my joints.
Okay.
And I also think it's one of the greatest ways to have a really low barrier to entry. It might sound silly, but like a friendly way to help a beginner do strength training. Someone that's never walked in the gym and they're scared of the barbell. Hey, Mary, I want you to go pick up this sandbag. I'm going to show you how to pick it up. I just want you to carry it down to the end of the gym and back.
Yeah.
What a cool way to help someone get strong, gain confidence, and really find the benefit of the movement and kind of trick them into doing some fun lifting when they don't really quite know it. I think it's excellent.
No, that it is. I mean, that's the equivalent of, having someone come in wanting to invest and saying the minimum investment's $1 million. So many people are just overwhelmed by that. And the minimum investment there being like a really technical, doing a snatch or something like that, something that can legitimately take someone that's a good athlete months and months and a year to do it in a way where you look at it as a coach and be like, okay, that looks good. I feel good about turning my eyes away from that person at that point and letting them go. All those extra things that bridge that barrier to entry and make that first experience just like, oh man, this is cool. This makes sense to me. I can see how I could do this for a while.
Yeah. And it's funny because I love Olympic lifting. I love the technicality behind it. I love that feeling of, like I got to be dialed. I got to be focused. Everything's got to be on point. But and I still do it occasionally when I can, and my body feels good for it. But for me, my strength training is largely rooted in powerlifting and strongman stuff now. It's just easier on my body.
Yeah, that whole aspect of having Mary pick up a sandbag and walk it down and back, I love it. And I have a lot of people who, they go in, they see a loaded barbell. That's intimidating to them in and of itself. Even, you know, you can have a 200-pound dude who's never been in the gym, but he sees like a 135 in a bar. He's like, I don't know about that. A lot can go wrong. But I mean, I usually start them. I agree. Like I have a giant, like one of those like monster yokes, like an original Rogue monster yoke. I flip the fat bar up. I say, all right, I have a 50, a 75, and a 100-pound sandbag. See, just teach them how to pick it up, get to their knees, extend, throw it up. Once they get good at that, here's an Atlas stone. Here's a 50-pound Atlas stone, and teach them how to do that. And what the time they do that, a barbell is a joke.
Yeah, it's like, and it's such a great way to, I think, work in an awkward environment, right? It's fun to change it up. And again, it creates like this great, it opens up this territory. Spencer and I talk about this a lot, is like, how do we take this map that we're on, you know, and increase the territory? You've been around this stuff for a decade, for 15 years. There's only so many couplets, triplets. I mean, let's just be real, right?
Yeah. No, you have a limited palette.
Yeah. And I know the combinations are unlimited, right? But like, how many thrusters have I done, for the love? But if I'm looking around the gym and I'm looking on the whiteboard and it says, you know, hey, you're gonna do Fran today. I'm like, good golly, how many times have I done that? And I'm like, well, maybe I'll use that sandbag. Maybe I'll do like sandbag Fran. That sounds
horrible,
right? But
like, that sounds horrible.
But it sounds
different.
Fun.
It's
It sounds kind of fun again, where you all of a
Yep.
sudden, what drew you into this training method, the variety and the experience, you can have that again. Go do Fran and do it with a, you know, 75-pound sandbag. And instead of kipping pull-ups, try strict and just see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, like, give it a shot. And I bet you'll reinvigorate your training. I bet you might feel better. And honestly, you might even fill in some gaps that we miss out on just our traditional training.
That's funny that you say that, because now I'm recalling when a couple of strength coaches, when I was at Northwestern State, we did Franuary, and we didn't put this out to anyone, and just came up with a different way to do it every day.
Yeah.
And some days were super easy, but by design, it was like, we're going to die if you actually try to like do this like a Squat-tober or something.
Yeah.
But I don't, the creativity and being able to get that back into it, that was a missing component, I think, in a lot of CrossFit gyms when I'd step into them. And it was either, I mean, some of it was like, they didn't really know they had a CrossFit gym and they were using CrossFit programming, but the people that really shined, and I think have perpetuated their success of their gym, things like that, they were just having these normal conversations with, if they had a partner or whoever they're working with, like, let's just have fun. Like that should be a component, probably in all of it. But I don't care what the discipline is. I mean, I still, like, when I'm doing like this person's a bodybuilder that I'm working with, and they just want to do bodybuilding, like, there's still a component of, they have to be having fun doing it. Like, I don't care how disciplined somebody is. If you remove the fun aspect of it, or you get a bad taste in your mouth when you look at a workout on the board because of the frequency you've done it, or just whatever it is, like, that's a problem that you don't have to have. And I don't know if there's enough people that have just had that thought process, because it seems so simple when we're having this conversation, but there are still environments that are completely devoid of it and will continue to be devoid of it. And maybe it's just the person. It shows the level of creativity and like, hey, if I wouldn't be appealed by this at this point, you know, probably a lot of people share that mindset too at that point.
And I think it's just the shift of the culture, right? Is like, I think it gets back to that. It's become so specific in nature. It's like, how do I get good at CrossFit, right? Well, I'll tell you how you get good at CrossFit. Here's what we do in CrossFit better than anybody, is you move a barbell better than any other athlete out there, right? Like, for repetitive reps, tell me another athlete out there that can cycle a barbell more efficiently. I don't think anybody, you know, like, it's awesome. Right. Yeah. And here, so we do these things and we get good at this and we get good at this. But do you remember, if you guys have been around long enough, but a lot of people I don't think have anymore, but back in like 2006 and 2007, when CrossFit.com had this, they had this forum, right? And on the forum, it was all these blog posts, and this is like pre-Rogue and all this stuff. This is where you could see, you know, people telling you how to make rings and med balls in the oven, and, you know, like all this cool stuff. But in that was this crazy stew pot of like training practices. because you had law enforcement and military, and people would be sharing this like, I tried Grace with the sandbag today. It was crazy. Or I tried working out on a full stomach, and it like, because I have to for my job. I'm going to try working out at midnight tonight and see how it goes. And people were just like creating this like actually really varied environment, and no one cared that it didn't look like the workout on the whiteboard. It was like, no, let's like really make, this is a varied program. Like let's really make it varied.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, I think, lost that on the gym level, the affiliate, the individual level, but it doesn't have to be. Like, let's embrace that again.
Yeah.
And if you're not trying to go to the games, if you've been around like us for a decade, for 15 years, when it says Fran on the whiteboard, go find something else. Get a kettlebell and do a single arm thruster and alternate sides. Go grab a sandbag. Like, do an inverted row instead of a pull up. Like, just start to cultivate that creativity again, and you will have fun. It'll light that fire under you again. You don't have to abandon the training program. You just need to take your map and expand the territory.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's whenever I work with any CrossFitters that come into my gym, that's one that I explain it like this. Like you're saying, like barbell to sandbag. So if I'm going from point A to point B up the mountain, point B is my final destination. I'm going barbell. I'm gonna go straight there. Yep. Okay. So I've gone straight there. That's cool. In the game of CrossFit, we need to have an idea. Like you're saying, you're expanding map of just an idea of everything. So, well, instead of going from point A to point B directly, what if I start going to point B directly with the barbell, then use a sandbag, I kind of veer off the path a little bit and I see what's over here. And then I come back to the barbell and then I go to the left. I start using alternating kettlebells. Oh, all right, now I know it's over the left. Go back to the barbell. So every time we're trying something different, but we're coming back to the middle, but we're still getting up the hill. And by the time you get to the point B, you've seen so much more and you have experienced so much more than just the barbell. And you're more well-rounded.
And here's the thing. Isn't that like the true essence of like original CrossFit?
Just a little bit.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
just a little bit.
Like that's like that unknowable variance. And yes, some things back in the day got ridiculous. You know, do you remember seeing like I think it was Kelly Starrett and Adrian Bosman doing the throwing Grace? Do you remember this? They would do like a clean and jerk, and they were on the beach, I think, and they would like clean and jerk it and throw it as far as they could. Yeah. But the point being is like that culture was there. That the experimentation
there you go
wasn't a taboo.
Yeah,
it was just part of the program. And now it's like, hey, let's get back to that, because guess what? I'm 15 years into it. I love the community.
Yeah,
I love the people. I love the training method. And some days I get really bored. So guess what? I'm going to get a sandbag instead, or I'm going to switch things up, and I'm still going to maintain the stimulus. So anyway, man, it's just such a, I think, important thing to be asking that question.
Yeah.
And like you said, have fun with it, right? Know how to self-assess, know what's appropriate. Your different version of yourself every day you walk in the gym. Take ownership of that, be mature, and understand that that's okay, that not every day is light your hair on fire day.
Right.
And when it is, go for it, because you can. And when it's not, don't, give yourself some grace, man. And you will be able to do it for a lifetime. I'm convinced of it.
I'm 100% certain that in the beginning, I challenged some people with that, because I was like, this doesn't last. All these people are going to be busted and laid in a burning pit somewhere. No. But because that level of creativity was really present, I think, and it has adapted along the way. And I think, I mean, if we see the same jump in the last decade, in the next decade, with thoughtfulness and creativity, no doubt. I already think there's people that if they're listening to what we're saying in this conversation, you absolutely can do it for a lifetime. I know too many people doing too many extreme things at an extremely advanced age, and they've been honest with themselves about how to do that and didn't bite off more they can chew and made those tweaks when they had to. And yeah, you have a lifetime, a legitimate lifetime of looking forward to being able to do physical, rigors.
And here's the thing, I know those people are out there, because we're having this conversation now. I have it with Spencer, and like, I know those people are out there. You just have to give yourself permission to do it. Don't feel like you're you're abandoning ship just because you're learning how to self-assess and experiment. You're not. It's okay.
Yep.
You're still doing the thing. You're still using the method. You're still a part of the community.
Yeah.
That doesn't change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the sad part is, even when you figure it out, 2 months from that, you're gonna have to figure something else out.
That's the great thing.
It never stops. I just taught myself at the level I'm training. Like I have to take 2 days of like lifting off before I do any type of heavy lower body.
Yeah.
Complete off. And it goes great. But if I push that, can't do it.
And that's the thing is you got to be willing to self-assess, right? And as like performance clock is ticking, as we get older, as our life experience changes, as our desires outside of the gym change, all that stuff plays a role. There might be a season where you want to have a 600-pound back squat. That's great. Chase it. And guess what? When that season's over, reevaluate. Don't keep your 600-pound back squat just for the sake of saying you can do it. Figure out what the heck you're doing.
Right. So we've had you on for over an hour. I know you got things to do.
Yeah.
I got 2 questions.
Yeah.
2 big questions we got to end with, at least, unless you have something else you want to bring up.
No, you got it. Fire away.
Okay. All right. First one, if you had one commercial piece of gym equipment to bring into your gym, you can't say a lat pull down. You can't say any like belt squat, inverse curl, reverse hyper.
Yep.
And if you go into a Gold's gym and you see things like that, like a hammer strength or anything like that, what is the one piece of commercial gym equipment you would bring in?
Oh man, it's like the hammer row.
The mid row.
Yeah, where you could like alternate arms and do
it has like 4 grips. Yeah.
Row. I had to do that stuff with wrestling all the time.
Yeah.
Dude, either that or the T-bar row. You know, where you stand on the plates and you get, either one of those.
Okay.
I'm in.
Okay. All right. And then this one I ask every CrossFit we had on, and last week we had Emma McQuaid on, so it was a female version of this, but you are familiar as you're an American with the LeBron James, Michael Jordan conversation.
Emma, I don't think Emma knew who those people were.
No, she was Irish. She's Irish. She gets a pass.
Yeah, because
it's our fault. We should have figured out who the Irish Michael Jordan was and the Irish. Yeah.
Right. But if you had to take LeBron James or Michael Jordan real quick, knee jerk, who is it going to be?
Now, are we talking just like best basketball player of all time or like going to win a fight?
Let's say half court, one-on-one, best
question.
of 7.
Right. That's a valid question. I'm
glad you clarified that too,
right?
Because that's important too.
I'm going to go with Michael Jordan.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent.
If it's a fist fight, LeBron's going to win.
Oh,
I would have said the same thing.
Really?
Right? I feel like
he's got a lot of weight behind him. I don't know what that discrepancy is, but I bet LeBron is like 50 pounds heavier.
I bet he just like grabs him and slams
Jordan was
him
a
to the
greyhound.
ground.
Like he's streamlined.
Yeah, and that's why I'm putting my money on it. On Jordan for the half court. I think he's got the moves.
Crux of the question, but I will touch on this because I 100% agree Michael Jordan in a one-on-one scenario would win. And I'm pretty sure they're in a fist fight. I'm glad you brought this up, Chris. Being in a fist fight, I think Michael Jordan would win because I've seen his eyes when he gets really upset.
Okay.
He'll cut a baby.
Okay.
He'll cut a baby. So my question is, you've been on the floor with Rich.
Yeah.
Watch Fraser. Have you trained with Fraser before?
No, never trained with him.
Okay.
No.
Those two, prime, full week of games training. Let's say, for sake of argument, all things are equal, back and forth.
Yep.
Who's gonna win that?
Fraser.
Oh, that's the same thing Sam said. Now why?
About with the same speed.
The same speed. He cut me off actually.
Endurance.
Rich didn't have the endurance.
No.
Really?
I mean, think of and this is no knock, like Rich is a phenomenal athlete, but I mean, 333, right? So row 1,300 double unders, run 3 miles.
Yeah.
He was walking.
That's true.
Right. And then you think about Fraser at the ranch, run the 6 miles. Won it.
Yeah, it was meters. I don't remember exactly, but yeah.
I mean, like that when you have that, and I think part of that was maybe because of, again, the evolution of programming. I think Rich helped bring in some of that. Like Khalipa brought some of that in with Hinshaw and things like that. And I think Fraser got the advantage to be able to apply that and learn like how important that was. But if you just asked me based off of like their peak, who knows what Rich could have done if he had that earlier on. But I think Fraser has that over him.
Okay. And then going off what you brought up, which we brought up with Emma when it comes to Toomey and Briggs, You put them both on an octagon, and this is Dustin's favorite. This is the last event in the games. It's an octagon round robin.
We have enough conversations
Fraser
with
again?
CrossFitters. We will influence it, and octagon fighting will be in the games.
Yeah.
Who wins between Toomey and Briggs? Briggs.
No.
She's crazy.
Who wins? Well, you can answer that one too, but I want to know between Froning and Fraser, who's going to win that.
Let me think.
Yeah, see that.
I'm trying to think about like background.
Okay.
I've got a theory.
Okay.
That has no bearing at all.
This is great. That's exactly the kind
of
theories
you're a wrestler, so I know that you're
oh
thinking
yes.
Yeah, like he's being really thoughtful about this.
Yes, he is.
Here's my theory. Is that if you look at some of the elite CrossFitters, they played sports, and there's quite a few that played baseball.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Here's my theory. If they played at a high level, they have the benefit of like the weight training and the explosive power, some conditioning and things like that. It's got this great like athleticism element to it, but it's not hard. Like they didn't have to flip the switch to see the white light every day.
Right. To kill someone.
I started wrestling when I was 6.
Yeah.
And like I was flipping the switch from the time I was a little kid, like kill or be killed, you know?
Yep.
And I think you can only flip the switch so many times.
Okay.
And I think that those like baseball players and those athletes that didn't have quite that level of intensity at a younger age can tap into that longer than guys like maybe me that flipped the switch. I mean, the training stuff that I did was horrendous. People always be like, what's harder, CrossFit or wrestling? I'm like, wrestling. Like, first of all, you can eat when you're CrossFit.
Right.
But like, with that being said, I am going to go off of Fraser because I think he has a little bit like different experience in an athletic background than Rich. I think he's got a little bit more, to my knowledge, I think he has a little bit more variety and potentially a little bit more athleticism than Rich. Just based off of the experiences that he's had. The
Olympic lifting background.
Yeah. Now craziness, both of them are insanely competitive. So I think on like having to die to win, they're on a pretty similar level.
Okay. Because every time I've watched replays and like my woman's been to the CrossFit Games 3 times on a team. So she's like, I've watched a lot, been to a lot. And like when I don't know, man, it's like same thing with Michael Jordan. When I see Rich's eyes.
Yeah.
When he decides like, I'm going to win now. And it's over. And it's one of those things I watch Fraser. He kind of like stops.
I'll tell you who wins that one.
I'll
tell you if you can throw anybody in there.
Yeah.
Bridges. I mean, here's the thing. Like,
he'll kill him.
If you ever had any kind of hand-to-hand combat, what are you gonna do? Like wall ball somebody?
No.
Like that's like
his first profession was that.
I've seen someone use a wall ball as a method. It's incredibly devastating.
I'm gonna wall ball you.
When someone decide if a baseball player throws a 20-pound med ball across the room in anger and the person's not looking,
but like
ended.
hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
Like we used to kid around, be like, so you're like when you get a CrossFitter walking around that is acting really tough. It's like I don't know. Like if you've never wrestled or done jujitsu, like what are you gonna do? Like clean and jerk me? I don't care. Like I'm gonna double leg you and destroy you. I'm gonna pile drive you into the ground. So like anybody, I don't think Matt or Rich have any, to my knowledge, have any experience with any kind of like wrestling, jujitsu, any kind of hand-to-hand thing. So you put someone like, here you go, like old school Ricky Fausto. You remember that name?
No,
that's
I don't.
Like 08 CrossFit Games.
Okay.
He wrestled in college.
Okay.
Me, Josh Bridges. You put a wrestler in there, watch out.
Okay.
I don't care how big you are.
Yeah, I mean,
well, now we're going a quick rabbit hole. Okay. You and Josh Bridges are in a cage.
Oh man.
Oh, good. Now are you going to put him in a Kimura? Or are you a scissor man? Like, what are you going to do?
No, I mean, we're both wrestlers, right? But the advantage that Josh has now is that he trained to do like the boxing thing with Hefner. Yeah. I didn't train to box, right?
He looked good, didn't
Bridges,
he did.
Bridges would have the one up on me with the hand-to-hand.
Uh-huh.
But if you put us
like
both,
you'd bite his ear though.
If you put us both in our prime, and I would say this to Josh, if we both were in our prime at wrestling, I put my money on me for just a wrestling match.
Yeah. So if you Nate Diaz'd him and just rushed Conor McGregor and just like slammed against him, he'd have no reach and he'll be all ground game.
I mean, maybe, right? But
Yes.
he's got the hands now. I don't have that training.
Okay.
I just have to know I'm going to take a hit when I'm going in and accept that. You just
Okay.
know it's going to happen, and I'm okay with that.
Okay. Well, before we go, is there anything you want to plug real quick? I'll put the links down below.
Oh gosh, I mean, guys, we just like, there's so much information out there now. There's a billion online training programs, right? It's a saturated market. Like I said, if you guys want to go to the CrossFit Games, Speal programming is not the one. If you want to have a well-rounded program where we try to really foster getting outside, that's what we do. Spealprogramming.com. Spencer and I are working on that way to really try to self-assess. It's called Sojourn Fitness, SOJOURN.fitness. Honestly, guys, it's a conversation like we're having here. How do you self-assess on a daily basis? We've got some cool videos on how to do that for flexibility, mobility, some really simple strength tests to decide what's appropriate, a movement tree that opens up that experimentation like we talked about, where you get to kind of look and say, hey, here's a hinge pattern in the workout today, but on Sojourn, there's all these under here. I'm going to choose this one. Those two things are really it. On the Speal programming side, we're trying to foster that environment of getting people outside. We're going to have a Speal experience down in Moab, April 9th. We're going to go run the Amasa Trail Run. It's a 15K trail run. And we're just going to do our regular training and go down there and experience it and go run together, go for some hikes, hang out. We'll post up how to sign up for that soon. And in the summer, we're going to do a mountain biking one. So if you guys are into that kind of thing, if you like to express your fitness outside, we're probably a great fit. That's really what we want to encourage people to do. And I think that leads to self-assessment. It leads to asking the question of why I'm doing it. So, yeah, those are the two things. Sorry for all my rants today, guys.
No, absolutely not. Dude, Chris, you're a very forward-thinking individual. And I mean, there are going to be so many questions coming out of this podcast. I'd love to have you back down the road if you're available and just continue this conversation when it comes to actually self-regulation and understanding, the individual as they need to progress.
Totally. And like, word to encouragement, again, it's no knock on CrossFit or anything like that, right? Like, I love it. I have a CrossFit gym. It's an amazing method. And I think it's like, for gym owners and for individuals, just give yourself that permission to experiment a little bit, to make it fun, to make it unique, to customize it a little bit based off your needs. And for the gym owners out there, man, like, that, you can have a gym for a lifetime if you start thinking like that now.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right, good sir. We'll let you go, and I'll send you all that mustache information.
Need it? Not there yet, but we'll start working on it now.
Once it looks good, then we need you back on. Then we can compare.
All right, brother, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, fellas.
Bye. That guy has seen so much.
Yeah.
And he is so, like, that's very forward thinking individual. I genuinely meant that. He understands what it takes to negotiate every nick and knack. That's impressive. That's awesome. I love to hear like top level guys and gals like that actually understand it and don't have someone constantly like telling them what to do. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I think someone like him at his level, he would get people coming through the front door regardless of anything.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I can't make that comparison. I don't know if you put him on a tier, if you take a CrossFit gym that's being ran by someone who is not of his status, you think it would make more sense for some of those people to be being thoughtful about stuff because they're not selling a name or anything beyond, what you get when you walk through the door. He doesn't necessarily have to be thinking that way, and the fact that he has and has went to that depth and continually looking at that, how do we make this, what's the bigger why with the individual and with the gym and the future of everything. He is I think that's where you and I have both found ourselves. Just if you're in a coaching atmosphere for long enough, trying to perpetually improve, that why can change, and there has to be a lot of depth to that for it to make sense, I think. long term.
All right. Well, do you have anything you want to add before we sign off?
I don't.
All right. Well, until we see everyone next time, ciao for now.